Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. David Orman, and you're listening to Dr. Orman's Lifecast podcast. Today is July 22nd, and the topic I called it the pain of weight. Most people are certainly aware of the grave difficulty that the healthcare system is facing because of the issue of weight or obesity. Most people individually are suffering to a large degree, or certainly know people who are suffering to a large degree. Various illnesses correlate with obesity. Various pains, particularly back pain, correlate with obesity. We can spend the next 20 minutes covering topics and statistics and facts, but the fact is that most people are aware of this. They know that it is a problem, and it is a problem that has not had a favorable solution, despite the fact that there are more products on the market as it relates to weight loss than anything else. Pain is a close second. There are more books on the subject than virtually anything else, and there is so much information, often conflicting, as it relates to diet, as it relates to weight loss, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is, if we look to the ancient past, that's a weird way of saying an ancient past as opposed to modern past. If we look to the past and blend it with current medicine and current information, we in fact do have a solution. It is not an easy one, it is just an effective one. It will work, and it will work for everyone provided they're willing to go through some degree of difficulty. Here's what I mean. If you look at the information from approximately 4,000 years ago from the world of acupuncture, states that there are specific points on the body that store emotions, whether it be shame or guilt or anger. Whatever the case is, there are points that are associated with that, and then there are two or 3 points, one point in particular that is associated with all trapped emotion. And if you treat that particular point, and typically you need to do it several times, you can begin the release of all of that stored information. Let me forewarn you, it is a difficult process. You will be exposed to things you don't want to remember. You're exposed to feelings you don't want to experience. And if you are willing to go through the dark night, so to speak, and come out the other end, you will never be the same. Your physical appearance will dramatically improve. Your overall personality will come forth in a way that you've never experienced this level of joy or this level of happiness and this level of consistency. And it's all because of one point. That's what ancient medicine says. In more modern times, particularly the research that's coming out of MIT. Now, when I hear MIT, I always think engineering and some of the brilliant stuff from robotics and AI and all that area, but they have done some incredible work with neuroscience. And ironically, some of the information from MIT states that stored emotions, they are typically found in the spine and in the gut. And in particular, the identical point that was utilized 4,000 years ago, that is on the upper torso. And when this point is treated, as I mentioned before, it is not uncommon for some of the more difficult or most difficult traumas to come forth. And they can be hard to deal with. That's why it would not behoove you to work on this yourself. It would be helpful to work on this with a team that would involve an acupuncturist, team that would involve somebody who works in the neighborhood of psychology. It doesn't necessarily mean a psychologist or counselor. It could be a life coach. It could be a priest or a rabbi. It could be somebody that you totally trust, but make sure they have the skill to deal with them, because there may be issues that come up that are very raw, that are very personal, and that are very emotive, meaning you might want to bring a box or 2 or 6 of tissues with you. There is also an herb that helps to clear this type of emotion, and it's often used with the particular point that I mentioned. I'm designing a course which will cover all of these points, not only the one on the torso, and correlating with the various herbal medicines which will work with that. And here's the thing, when you clear the surface, it reminds me of painful static. And what I mean by that is you have that all that emotion, often what we would consider negative emotion. I'll come back to that in a second. But you also have this interference. In other words, the true self is not coming out because of all of these situations. So we guard ourselves, we protect ourselves in the mistaken belief that that's going to be effective. But in fact, what we're really doing is walling ourselves in so the true self is unable to come forth. Most people call them negative emotions, things as I mentioned, anger or fear or shame or guilt, because they hurt. I mean, they hurt when you experience them, they hurt when you relive them, they hurt when you recall them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, if you think about the universe, we'll call it, or the Tao, or whatever word works for you, great spirit, uh, teaching us a lesson. And more often than not, and this is sort of a cliche, but there is truth in it. We're tapped on the shoulder, then we're given a gentle push, then a big shove, and then the wall collapses. Sometimes we, for whatever reason, choose or we find ourselves in situations where we have to learn the lesson with difficulty. And I always make a joke, my next life, I want to learn the difficult lessons in an easy way, particularly involving cookies. But that doesn't always happen, and that usually doesn't happen. And it's always the difficult ones that are often the powerful ones. But it's also the Tao, the universe loving us in a very strange way. And even though it doesn't feel that way, when we get through these moments, we recognize, wow, I am so much stronger. I am so much happier. I'm so much more prosperous. Things are starting to flow in ways that I never thought possible. And had I not gone through that situation, it would not have occurred. So, in a peculiar way, the very, very, very first step is to recognize, oh, okay, I may hate this situation, but I am going to do my best to actually love this situation, even though it is not what I want, even though it is brutal, even though it is difficult. I'm going to love this situation. Now, contrast it with the times in your life when you've hated. I hate this situation, da da da, and it lasted longer than maybe what it needed to, or hating it made it worse. So if we can find a way to actually love this situation and to recognize that it is a lesson that we need to learn, and then when we learn this particular lesson, we no longer have to experience it ever again. And that peeping sound is this little fella here. His name is Zeus. He is an African gray, and he's constantly by my side. So if you hear anybody talking or peeping or singing or something, you'll know who it is. So as I was mentioning, loving the situation, accepting it for what it is, not only accepting it for what it is, but wanting it to be exactly the way it is. Because once you accept it, once you stop fighting it, it has a tendency to calm down, to dissipate, to lose its power. And then your skills and your abilities, which have been hidden up until that point, they come forth because there isn't that internal battle. There's that acceptance. And when that occurs, that's when the situation typically is resolved, or else is it changes in some form or another. And that issue could, and we started with the topic of obesity, but it could be 1,001 different things, because obesity is not the bottom layer. Obesity is the layer above the bottom layer. Think of it as a two-story building. The first story is are the issues or the issue. And then the second layer is what we see, the obesity, the 10 to 15, 100 pounds that are covering it. And people, you try to use that and use food as a protection, as a drug, so to speak, to change their feelings, to hide. And when we start to utilize the skills that acupuncture can bring, that nutrition can bring, that herbal medicine can bring, that therapy, that words can bring, then the body starts to take on the blueprint, the shape that it was designed to. And we don't have to do any type of crazy diet. We don't have to go, live in the woods for a week eating bark. We get to do what we want to do in a way that fits our personality, that fits our chemistry, that fits our life, and our appearance has a tendency to come forth the way it was designed to. Thank you very much. You've been listening to Dr. Orman's Life Cast. If, as always, you have questions, please let me know. I will address every single one of them personally. From both of us, thank you for listening. See you next week.